Demonstrating critical thinking in accounting, applying a competency framework. Word count 8,206 words. M.C. Turner and M.M. Tyler. Abstract. Walcott and Sargent, 2021, have noted there is no single agreed-upon definition of critical thinking within accounting education or the accounting profession more broadly. Page 2. De Blanche and de Klerk, 2021, have recently proposed a critical thinking competency framework for accounting students. TDC framework. The TDC framework provides a definition of critical thinking with cognitive skills and dispositions we can use to identify and assess the demonstration of critical thinking skills by accounting students. This study applies the DTC framework to a first-year accounting unit at an Australian university involving 101 students from 5 offerings of the unit over 3 years, 2019 to 2021. The study explores in what ways we can support first-year accounting students to demonstrate at an introductory level critical thinking competencies based on the TDC framework. Students were supported to change key aspects of how they experience their learning in the context of a first-year accounting unit. Using Phenomenography, evidence is provided of students demonstrating critical thinking competencies at a foundational or introductory level. Cognitive skills of interpretation, analysis, evaluation, making inferences, explanations, self-regulation, and other, challenge assumptions, and open-minded about divergent worldviews. And dispositions, habits of mind, of confident in own ability to reason, and inquisitive. This study may encourage others to apply the TDC framework to other accounting education contexts. The TDC framework has the potential to be adopted as a single, agreed-upon definition of critical thinking within accounting education, as we seek to further understand how we can support accounting students to demonstrate critical thinking skills during their study of accounting at university. Further studies based on this data set are planned to study the demonstration of other soft skills by first-year accounting students. Keywords: accounting education, critical thinking competencies, approach to learning, higher education, active learning, critical thinking, first-year students, phenomenography, accounting. 1. Introduction. There has long been considerable interest in how accounting students can be supported to develop their critical thinking skills, as well as other higher-order thinking skills such as creative thinking, problem-solving, communication, and teamwork. American Accounting Association, 2012, page 87. Indeed, the accounting professional bodies require critical thinking skills to be demonstrated by accounting students. IAESB 2019, pages 132, 143 and 192. There have been many calls to action for changes to accounting education to meet this challenge, including from Walcott and Sargent, 2021. With the accounting profession evolving at a rapid pace, changes to accounting education are essential. If accounting educators and researchers care about the long-term value of the profession, they cannot continue to delay. Higher level critical thinking skills will enable tomorrow's accounting graduates to contribute more quickly to their organisations and ensure that the profession maintains relevance and value. Page 17. There are diverse opinions about what critical thinking skills are and how to support the experience of these skills while studying accounting in a formal education environment. A critical thinking competency framework for accounting students has been proposed by de Blanche and de Klerk 2021, TDC framework. This framework provides a common language and structure about critical thinking skills in accounting. Yet it is one thing to have a proposed critical thinking competency framework and another to apply it to the reality of teaching accounting at university. This study provides a practical application of the TDC framework involving first-year accounting students at an Australian university. The student experience is examined in a first-year accounting unit over 3 years, 2019 to 2021, involving 5 offerings of the unit and with 101 students participating in the study. In this paper, unit is used to refer to an individual subject. It is important to note that this study does not examine students' perceptions of the quality of their critical thinking skills. There is little reason to believe students are good judges of the quality of their own learning, that is, of what they learn, especially in the challenging area of critical thinking skills. The adage, "we do not know what we do not know," can apply to such judgments by students. This study examines aspects of the experience of students of how they learn and how this experience relates to aspects of the TDC framework. As learning is something students do and experience themselves, evidence of their experience of learning is relevant and potentially more valuable than an external measure or observation from the researcher. This is particularly the case with critical thinking, where external measures of critical thinking skills can be difficult. This study outlines the theoretical background and research question. The use of phenomenography and the approach to data collection and analysis is then discussed. 2 major assignments, submitted in 8 stages, were used to identify the ways students experience critical thinking competencies under the TDC framework, in response to an integrated set of interventions introduced into this unit. These interventions are assessment, teacher-student relationship, teamwork, and instruction. These interventions are designed to support students to experience change in 4 aspects of how we learn: relevant structure, conceptions of learning, motivation, and approach to learning. It is contended that a precondition for students to be able to demonstrate soft skills such as critical thinking is that they experience active, deep learning, which in turn requires students to experience high-level relevant structures, high-level conceptions of learning, and internal motivation. Turner and Baskerville, 2013. The TDC framework provides a list of critical thinking competencies for accounting students. This study explores whether, and if so how, students in a first-year accounting unit can demonstrate these critical thinking competencies. This study does not seek to measure whether students have developed critical thinking skills during this unit. Rather, we seek to measure and understand whether students are demonstrating the exercise of specific competencies related to critical thinking. This provides some insights about how practically accounting students can be supported to gain experience of using critical thinking skills in the context of studying accounting at university. Based on the principle of learning by doing, this has the potential to support the development of critical thinking skills in that context. 2. Theoretical background and research question. This study explores how we can support accounting students to demonstrate critical thinking skills. It applies a critical thinking competency framework, TDC framework, to a specific accounting education context. This framework was proposed by de Blanche and de Klerk 2021 and is used in this study to explore the exercise of critical thinking skills within the specific discipline of accounting. An approach to learning lens is used to study how we can support students to demonstrate critical thinking skills. Approach to learning research focuses on how students approach their learning in specific learning contexts, conceiving learning to take place within the learning context. A student's approach to learning is not a personal characteristic that is consistent in all contexts, but rather a way of describing how a student interacts with a particular learning task. Biggs, 1993, Martin, 1988. This relational perspective sees a student's approach to learning as being either surface or deep. Martin and Saljo, 1976. Entwistle and Ramsden, 1983, and Biggs, 1993, identified an achieving strategic approach to learning involving students selecting between surface and deep learning. It is considered this does not represent an approach to learning separate from surface or deep learning. Biggs et al. 2001, Kemba et al. 1999, Zegers 2002. The approach to learning which students experience in response to their learning context will lead to qualitatively different and distinct types of learning outcomes. There is evidence students who experience surface learning will not demonstrate personal capabilities such as critical thinking. Trigwell and Prosser, 1991. For this reason, it is considered important to support students to experience active, deep learning in an accounting unit before they will have the opportunity to demonstrate critical thinking skills. It is noted that approaches to learning are different to learning styles. Learning styles are a student characteristic, generally seen as a stable trait. Approaches to learning are not a student characteristic, but are the response of students to the learning context, which can vary depending on the learning context. Also, there is considerable doubt whether the existence of fixed learning styles is supported by evidence. Cuvis, 2015. There is no widely accepted definition of critical thinking, including within accounting education or the accounting profession more broadly. Walcott and Sargent, 2021, page 2. There are a wide number of definitions used by accounting professional organisations, accreditation standards, and accounting education research. The American Philosophical Association, APA, using the Delphi method in the late 1980s, developed a consensus statement amongst a panel of experts regarding critical thinking. We understand critical thinking to be a purposeful, self-regulatory judgment which results in interpretation, analysis, evaluation, and inference, as well as explanation of the evidential, conceptual, methodological, criteriological, or contextual considerations upon which that judgment is based. The ideal critical thinker is habitually inquisitive, well-informed, trustful of reason, open-minded, flexible, fair-minded in evaluation, honest in facing personal biases, prudent in making judgment, willing to reconsider, clear about issues, orderly in complex matters, diligent in seeking relevant information, reasonable in the selection of criteria, focused in inquiry, and persistent in seeking results which are as precise as the subject and the circumstances of inquiry permit. Educating good critical thinkers combines developing critical thinking skills with nurturing those dispositions which consistently yield useful insights. Facioni, 1990, page 2. This definition of critical thinking identifies some cognitive skills and dispositions, or attitudes, that are connected to critical thinking. However, it is difficult to operationalize this definition to the design and delivery of tertiary education units in accounting. Also, it is not clear whether critical thinking involves generic skills that can be developed and demonstrated in any context, Balin et al. 1999, Nair and Stamler 2013, or whether they are context-specific, such as in the accounting discipline. See Abrami et al. 2015, page 280, for a discussion of this issue. It is contended by Walcott and Sargent 2021 that in relation to accounting education, all stakeholders highlight the need to demonstrate critical thinking skills in the context of technical knowledge that is relevant to an accountant's work. Page 4. The approach to learning lens used in this study views learning as taking place in a learning context. That is, in the interaction between an individual and their learning context, rather than within an individual. For this reason, we need to study how to support the demonstration of critical thinking skills in discipline contexts. Since the cognitive skills and dispositions of critical thinking are potentially transferable to other contexts, this study may have value across all university disciplines. This study has used the TDC framework, which is based on a literature review and an interactive qualitative analysis, IQA, using focus groups of educational experts, accounting educators, and postgraduate accounting students. The critical thinking competencies in the TDC framework are categorized into cognitive skills, attributes or abilities, and dispositions, habits of the mind. This study applies the TDC framework to a specific educational context involving interventions designed to support the preconditions for students to demonstrate soft skills such as critical thinking. This study uses a theoretical framework set out in Figure 1 below to support students to experience active, deep learning in a first-year accounting unit as a precondition to demonstrate critical thinking skills. See Turner and Baskerville 2013 for a further discussion of this framework. The framework focuses on 4 aspects of how we learn: relevant structure, conceptions of learning, motivation, and approach to learning. The interventions in the unit designed to support the experience by students of high-level relevant structure, high-level conceptions of learning, intrinsic motivation, and a deep approach to learning are assessment, teacher-student relationship, teamwork, and instruction. These interventions are discussed in more detail in the research methods section below. Figure 1 near here. This study explores how certain interventions made in a first-year accounting unit can support the demonstration of critical thinking competencies in the TDC framework. To the extent initial competencies can be demonstrated in first year, they can be developed further in later years. This study has addressed the following research question. In what ways can we support first-year accounting students to demonstrate at an introductory level critical thinking competencies based on the de Blanche and de Klerk 2021 Critical Thinking Competency Framework, TDC framework? 3. Research method. This study introduced into the design and delivery of a first-year undergraduate accounting unit an integrated set of interventions: assessment, teamwork, teacher-student relationship, and instruction. These interventions were designed to support accounting students to experience high-level relevant structure, high-level conceptions of learning, intrinsic motivation, and an active, deep approach to learning as a necessary precondition to demonstrate soft skills such as critical thinking. Taking a second-order perspective and using phenomenography as a research approach, the effect of these interventions on the way students demonstrate critical thinking skills was examined. 2 assignments, submitted in 8 stages, were used to identify the ways students demonstrate critical thinking competencies using the TDC framework. Participants. This study examined the experience of learning of 101 students in a first-year undergraduate accounting unit at an Australian university, from 5 offerings of the unit over 3 years, 2019 to 2021. This involved 23 students in 2019, 1 offering, 25 students in 2020, 2 offerings, and 53 students in 2021, 2 offerings. 72% of students were female and 28% male, and 82% were enrolled as online students. These students were from all states and territories of Australia and were largely from regional areas, as well as including students from the major metropolitan areas of Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne and Perth in Australia. Interventions. The interventions in this study are characterised as assessment, teamwork, teacher-student relationship and instruction. These are represented as boxes in the centre of Figure 1 above. Assessment. The assessment used is aligned with a comprehensive set of interdependent interventions designed to support students to experience change in the ways they experience how they learn in a university unit. It is grounded in the concept of constructive alignment, Biggs 1999. The assessment involves structured, sequenced assignments, being 2 major assignments submitted in 8 stages, comprising 95% of the total assessment. The assignments were assessed learning tasks involving individualised, authentic assessments with regular formative feedback provided to students. They also included opportunities for students to reflect on and discuss different aspects of their experience of learning. The assignments involved each student analysing a different listed company, that is, the assignments were different for each student. They adapted the concepts taught in the unit to a real company, that is, the assessments were authentic in the sense of being designed to give students real-world experiences. Stein et al., 2004, page 240. Some stages in the assignments involve students writing their personal reflections on key concepts in the readings. They were a structured form of learning journal. They were designed to be authentic in the sense that learning experiences are perceived as authentic when they engage students' lived experience, and students can find meaningful connections with their current views, understandings and experiences, and newer views, understandings and experiences they meet as they learn in and about a real-world or authentic community of practice. Stein et al., 2004, page 240. They were also individualised as each student brought their own different perspectives and backgrounds to their personal engagement with the readings. The readings included a study guide of about 80,000 words, which were designed to be supportive of deep learning by students. These readings were integrated into the assessed learning tasks, including the spreadsheets, used in the 2 assignments. The study guide, the 2 assignments, and the spreadsheets used are available from the corresponding author. Besides a grade, students were given formative feedback on completion of each of the 8 stages of the 2 assignments. This feedback involved individual feedback, usually provided to each student by the same marker throughout the unit. General feedback from the teacher to all students, and exemplars of other students' work. Teamwork. A range of cooperative learning techniques were employed to support students to engage in teamwork. The face-to-face and online classes included opportunities for students to interact and participate in real time, using software such as Socrative and Zoom. There were a range of online supports such as online forums, for example Facebook, MS Teams, and blogs to facilitate teamwork. In the assignment, students were required to answer questions about the outcomes of discussions with other students and the insights of other students. As each student had a different firm, they could not copy each other's work and could freely share their work without fear of being accused of cheating. Students needed to understand the concepts studied to adapt them to the circumstances of their firm and to form judgments about their firm. Teamwork was essential to improving the quality of their judgments, allowing students to draw on the prior knowledge and previous experience of others in the unit, and to consider issues being faced with other firms. In these ways, the social aspect of learning was strongly emphasised, both by the provision of various structures to support cooperative learning and by assignments which rewarded students who made better judgments in their assessed learning tasks. Teacher-student relationship. Key aspects of this intervention were an informal, student-centred and facilitative teaching style, where right answers were not imposed, but curiosity, questioning and exploration were encouraged. Ramsden 2003, Fink 2003. The teacher-student relationship included direct instruction through lectures. Classes were a mixture of face-to-face and online, which could be attended live, that is synchronously, and were recorded so they could also be viewed asynchronously. Whether face-to-face or online, lectures and tutorials included opportunities for interaction by students and were used to support students to reflect on and deepen their understanding about key concepts. They were not designed to simply transmit facts and concepts, which were first introduced to students through the study guide, the reading of which was supported by assessments involving structured reflective learning journals and short videos. Instruction. This intervention included instruction on the need to experience high-level conceptions of learning, that is, to see learning as constructive, personal and involving searching for understanding and personal meaning, to be able to successfully negotiate the assessments in the unit. It also included use of a study guide that had a deep approach to learning embedded in it. Nidjus et al. 2005. As noted by Walcott and Sargent 2021, accounting textbooks tend to focus on lower level cognitive skills, for example Gupta and Marshall 2010, page 16. For this reason, this unit did not use a textbook. Instruction also involved use of authentic examples, including the application of concepts being taught to an exemplar company, in both classes and reading materials. Harrington and Curvin, 2007. TDC Framework. The TDC framework for critical thinking competencies for accounting students contains many attributes. In this study, we focused on the cognitive skills of interpretation, analysis, evaluation, making inferences, explanation, and self-regulation, as well as other cognitive skills of challenge assumptions and open-minded about divergent worldviews, and on dispositions, habits of mind, of confident in own ability to reason, and inquisitive. It may be valuable for future research to combine and reduce the number of attributes in the TDC framework of critical thinking competencies for accounting students, and to identify which ones may be considered introductory or foundational and more appropriate to focus on in first-year accounting units, and which could be considered more advanced and more appropriate to focus on in second and third-year accounting units. This study helps to do this by focusing on some attributes in the TDC framework and examining how accounting students may be experiencing them at an introductory level in a first-year accounting unit. Phenomenography. This study adopted a phenomenographic approach. Phenomenography seeks to describe aspects of the world as others see them and takes a second-order perspective. It is particularly effective for handling research questions relevant to student learning in an educational context, where the most fundamental aspect of learning is the way students experience phenomenon, such as approach to learning or critical thinking. The purpose of phenomenographic research is the identification of variation in the ways of experiencing phenomenon. Martin and Booth, 1997. Phenomenography focuses on the ways of experiencing a phenomenon, not on the psychological or cognitive processes in a person. Martin, 1988, Biggs, 1993. For example, approach to learning is not viewed as something internal psychologically or cognitively to a student, but is viewed as ways of experiencing how a student learns within the learning context of an accounting unit. Generalizability of the findings comes from the applicability of the context and content of learning in the unit examined in this study to other situations. Phenomenography usually uses interviews of students to measure their experience of how they learn. In this study, the key measure of students' experience of approach to learning were 8 submissions of 2 assignments by each student. As an integral part of these learning tasks, students expressed the ways in which they experienced their learning. This provided a rich source of material to identify and capture students' experience of critical thinking competencies in the context of an accounting unit. Data analysis. The 8 submissions of the 2 major assignments for each of the 101 students in the study were coded to several themes using in vivo software. These various extracted quotes were reviewed several times by the researchers. The narratives from students reported in this study are referred to as quotes from student without any further indicator. The narratives have been edited based on a standardized approach, where the wording and meaning are preserved, but some editing is done for spelling and grammar to facilitate the reading and accessibility of the quotes. Weiss, 1994, Sandalowski, 1994. In the next video, we'll look at the results and the conclusions that came from this study.